third segment that I want to talk about is the systems thinking segment. So after the experiential association with various aspects of systems concepts without actually getting deep into the concepts themselves, I wanted to take you one step deeper, deeper down the rabbit hole maybe, to give you a grounding in systems thinking terminology, so that if you found yourself in any of the current systems thinking literature, you wouldn't feel like you were lost. To present the concept of a system, I hope the discussions between Nit and Wit weren't too bad. To provide if we're talking about systems thinking, we first have to understand what a system is, what the concepts associated with a system being, that it's something that its existence is maintained through its mutual interactions of its components, and because of that mutual interaction, it has emergent characteristics that you can't find in any of the pieces. Ackoff said that the whole is not the sum of its parts, it's the product of their interactions. And so that understanding what a system is and realizing that boundaries are important, so that you know what's part of the system and what's part of its environment that it interacts with. It's just, that was considered to be an appropriate lead-in to give you a sense of what systems thinking is. And while Bertalanffy thought about systems thinking as a worldview, it's a way to look at things, and Senge portrayed systems thinking as a discipline, and with a discipline you have a set of habits that you can practice and develop to get better at. So that personally there was a time when I thought systems thinking was just a not very grown-up version of system dynamics, and that was because of the way that I got into some of this stuff. Fortunately, I ran into some people and some writings that caused me to expand my perspective on what systems thinking is, and Jackson's framework does a great deal of that in terms of providing a sensibility as to why there are so many different models and methods which claim to embrace the systems paradigm. So that systems thinking, if one is doing systems thinking, one is considering the pieces and their interactions and the emergent characteristics of those interactions and the boundary, so that they understand what's inside, what's part of the system and what's part of the environment, and the interactions of that system with its environment to the extent that it's relevant. Though when attempting to develop an understanding, my learning and my conviction is that it's better to model all of the relevant relations to a situation as opposed to a system, because it provides a better sense of where to stop, to understand what's relevant, what's not relevant. Is there a particular situation that I'm having a difficulty with, and then I begin to ask questions about, and what is it that has an influence on that, and what is it influencing? And I build a relationship model based upon that, as opposed to trying to model the entire sales organization. Right? And Ackoff was very fond of saying that that no matter where it is that the problem appears, in all likelihood, the reason for that problem is someplace else. So that it appears as though we have a sales problem. Though, is it really a sales problem, or is it a production delivery problem, and because our customers have been waiting so long for us to deliver stuff, they just decided to go buy from somebody else? All right? So it appears as though it's a sales problem, but the problem is not actually in sales. The problem is created somewhere else, and to deal with it, you don't go beat up on the sales force. You go figure out how to improve our delivery times. So you get from the situation of the appearance of a sales problem by continuing to ferret out relationships to get us all the way to find out that it is actually the impact or the influence that late delivery times have on the customer to alter their behavior so that they're not ordering. Okay. So the idea of the systems thinking segment was to provide a real solid grounding in what is a system and what is systems thinking based upon the definition of a system, and provide a lot of alternatives or optional things around that you can take a look at and think about, though that they're not absolutely essential. And so when having a conversation with someone else and they mention the system, my immediate response is, what does that mean? Because unless I understand what they consider to be the elements that are interacting in those interactions and where the boundary is and what part of the environment it's interacting with, I'm making an assumption that I know what they mean by the term the system. And most of the time, we are absolutely not lined up if I make those assumptions. So it's best to understand, to explicitly understand what is it that they're thinking about as the system. You know, and there, people try to come up with a definition for what a system is, and it's difficult. Well, it's actually ludicrous, because there are so many different types and variations that, you know, you can think about a clock as a system, which is a very well-defined set of interactions that produces a result. Then you can consider engineering a clock. You can design it and you can build it. Though consider an organization that develops over years based upon the interactions that happen within it. It's definitely not designed. You can seek to understand it to a certain extent. And the clock has a very fixed set of interactions, but the organization has active elements that have choice, so that things vary based upon what the individuals bring to the context. I continue to say that people always do exactly what makes the most amount of sense to them in the context of the moment based on their current understanding. Which means that if you do something that I don't understand, well, it simply appears to me that I don't understand. I have to admit that it makes complete sense to you. Otherwise, you wouldn't do it. So rather than me claim that what you're doing is wrong or doesn't make sense, I should first seek to understand why it is that it makes sense to you, which is back to Covey in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and seek first to understand and then be understood. So the connections are just mind-boggling in terms of the way all of this stuff actually ends up being related to each other. And I'm out of gas. What? You got a question? I get carried away. Well, I put everybody to sleep.
No. No. So am I right in assuming that in approaching a problem, a mess, so we say, that you will go directly to the problem and work backwards and around it, rather than trying to say, okay, this is part of a bigger system, and we look at the whole system. So we sort of do as Eckhart would do, go to the end and work backwards.
It's a very appropriate question with a difficult answer.
That's good. Glad to hear it.
But, you know, there's some people who find their way to systems thinking become evangelists, and they throw the baby out with the bathwater, because they finally get to a point of saying systems thinking is everything, and we should not be systemic. We should not be systematic about things. We have to do synthesis, but we can no longer do analysis. And I believe that they're two sides of the same coin. If I think about the example that I remember is, if I think about the clock, I can analyze the clock forever, and I can figure out how all of the pieces interact, and why the hand ticks off as it does as the pieces move inside. But never from studying the clock can I figure out why the tick size is as big as it is. Only by understanding the clock in the context of the rotation of the Earth does the tick size make any sense. So that there's something about understanding the larger context that's essential. So my answer to your question is yes. The best understanding comes from some of both. Anything else?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. Well, I hope that you have found this session informative and reassuring, and not too much all at once. As I said, I do have a tendency to get carried away, and
No, I find it all really intriguing.
well, good. Okay. Then we will continue to be intrigued together.
All right.
And as you're progressing through the segments, because people are progressing at different rates in different places, if you get to a point where you would like to have a session on some particular segment, don't hesitate to go to this link and say, I need a session on this or this or this, and you can overload the ballot box if you want to, so that you can submit it multiple times, or you can do one and then you can come back and do another and a different one, and I continue to monitor the responses to figure out, well, it looks like we ought to have a session on this, because there's just no way for me other than this, I think, to get a sense of when people need things. And the other thing is, I've been doing them at 10 o'clock in the morning and 3 o'clock in the afternoon and at noon on Eastern Daylight Time. Hopefully, there are people participating in this program in about 17 time zones. People will respond to this particular survey and give me a better sense of when it's appropriate to have sessions. Note that UTC 0 is midnight, so that -5 would be 7 o'clock in the evening. Okay, so provide feedback and we'll adjust. Am I going to do a session at 2 o'clock in the morning? I don't know. I've done stranger things. So, okay.
All right. Thank you.
Well, Thank you for participating. I look forward to your perspectives on all of the bits and pieces and the sundry parts, and we will continue. Okay?
All right.
Thanks, Gene.
Bye, all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.